Hey, welcome everybody. You made it back to another It Starts With Me, and we have a great show that is prepared for you today. We have Scott Ritzheirmer with us, and he's going to be awesome. He scales architects. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation, as you can already tell, because this is not something that I'm even familiar with. I had to talk with him a little bit just to kind of understand what is it to scale architects. So this is going to be really, really interesting, and I'm excited about the whole conversation. First off, I want to remind everybody that every single Monday, you'll be able to jump in there with Mike on his show on YouTube, and it's called What It Takes, where he gives out these tips to help you scale businesses. That's kind of funny, just like Scott. So just check that out. Also, every single Wednesday at 12:30, It Starts With Me. We're in season 2. So this has been a lot of fun. All right. And then we culminate the weekend or the week with Community Beacon, where Mike and myself will come together and share our different experiences, and how we've gotten over and how we made it so far, so that maybe you can avoid some of the pitfalls that we've had to go through. So let me just tell you a little bit about Scott real quick. So Scott helped start Scott kind of started nearly 20,000 new businesses and nonprofits with his business partner, and it was a multi-million-dollar business through an exceptional and extended growth phase. It took about 10 years, and there was a lot of double-digit growth, all before he turned the age of 35. So this is a true success story, right? He founded Scale Architects to help founders and leaders across the country identify the right growth strategies and find the right guides to get them on the fast track to predictable success, which is, if there's any success, predictable success is very key. And from there, he helped them to stay as long as they possibly could, continue to just move. So I'm excited about bringing him on to the show. Without further ado, Scott.
Hey, Joel. Thanks for having me.
What's going on, brother? Man, I'm really excited about this, and I'm gonna tell you the reason why. Because when I was a kid, all I wanted to be was like an architectural engineer, and then as I grew older, I wanted to be like a coach. And just thinking about what we kind of talked about, behind the scenes, architect coaching. And it's just like, whoa, this guy doing both of them. That's legit right there.
It's so true. It took me quite a while to catch on to the coaching side of things. In fact, I got into this kind of begrudgingly coaching and then fell in love with it. But like you, I was a nerdy kid who, there's the quintessential entrepreneur. I wasn't that. I always kind of found myself in business pursuits, but it was more accidental. If I had time on my hand, I would go and I remember I would sketch out little architectural drawings and schematics. And it was just, I've always loved that idea of designing things, the creativity and structure coming together is captured so well by that. And you're right, being a scale architect, folks are like, what is that? Well, it's to an extent, it's something that we've made up because there wasn't anything that really described what we did and how we helped organizations. We weren't kind of classical coaches. We weren't the consultants who come in, interview everybody, and then write a 100-page report. We come in and we work side by side with organizations to help them design the way that their organization works to make it scalable, which is just exhilarating. It's it's a little nerdy, I admit. Not everyone's wired this way, but for me, helping a team come together, helping an organization to achieve their goals, not just once, but consistently and predictably over time, it excites me like little else.
Yeah, I like that you said that consistently over time. That's really important. Man, something else came to my mind while you were discussing, and it was just that you can be whatever you want to be, right? Somehow you figured out how to merge, what seems like they wouldn't be two like industries, but really I think that they are, in everything, there's always mentorship. And I don't think that we've ever thought about mentorship like we do in the terms, in this day and age where coaching is a huge thing, especially, post COVID. Coaching is huge, and realizing how much coaching or how much mentoring goes into every single thing all the time it's what has given us opportunity to really scale like never before. So what you're doing is, I think it's amazing, man. It's really amazing that you guys came up with this. Was it sheerly your idea, or you just fell into
Yeah,
it?
I can't take too much credit. So what it is before I was at an organization I co-founded, led with my business partner. It's where we started all those organizations, lots of them nonprofits, some for-profits. And one of the things that we found along that way, there were several tools that kind of helped us a whole lot. And one of those tools that just had a profound impact on me, both individually and for us organizationally and for those we served, was this thing called the predictable success model. And what it is, it's a model developed by my friend and colleague now, Les McEwen. He started 42 businesses by the time he was 35. He has consulted with some very recognizable firms here in the U.S., started an incubator that ended up having locations on 6 different continents, started thousands of organizations himself. And as he was doing that, he noticed that these patterns were showing up, that organizations were starting and they were struggling, and then some of them would make it through and they'd have this time where they were just naturally growing, and then they'd start struggling again. And he couldn't really tell why for a while, but just sees this pattern playing over and over again. And as he looks at it closely, and as he's working with all these different organizations, he starts to see there are 7 different stages of growth that every organization goes through. And in understanding those stages and understanding what it takes to win in each of those stages, you can focus on just 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 at the most things. And if you focus on those and you've picked the right things, that's where success comes from, especially for organizations as a whole, any group of 2 or more, actually. And so to answer your question, I used this for my company. I used it for our clients. And as I was looking at the next stage of the journey, what I wanted it to be, I was young. I'm still young. I look like I'm about 22 for anyone watching video. For anyone who isn't, you've got to check it out. Joel's got a great setup here. But I had achieved quite a bit in a relatively short period of time. And I don't say that boastfully, but what was driving me at the point changed, right? I knew what it meant to build a successful business. What I really wanted to taste, though, was going deeper with folks and helping them build their successful businesses. And what better way to do it than with this model that's been so instrumental in changing my life? And so I actually teamed up with Les, and together we built the Scale Architects program.
That's interesting. So Les McQueen, is that
McEwen? Yeah. Yep. He sounds a lot cooler than me because he's got an Irish accent, but that explains the name.
All right. So that's interesting. And you guys go back some time, but it's this predictable success model, which is really important and that's the thing about success, right? Success leaves clues, so there's evidence of success, and there's so many different stories. I mean, just thinking about Napoleon Hill, just off the top, so many different people attribute most of their success to 1 or 2 things that Napoleon Hill has taught them, or that they've read in one of his books, and then they attribute it to the long run of things. But you guys recognize these 7 patterns, these 7 stages, and that's what you started to utilize. So I guess it's kind of like 2 different questions that I have here. Was it 100% the betterment of the people that you desired to serve, or was it the recognition of these focal points that you just wanted to share with people that caused you to launch, this new business?
Yeah, I think those 2 they're almost one and the same for me. I think, so it helps to kind of identify a couple of the early stages, at least. We don't have to go through all of them, but some of the early stages, the very first one's called early struggle. And that kind of makes sense. Like if you're an entrepreneur, which my clients tend to be entrepreneurs, they go out, you start a new business, you're creating something from nothing. That's going to be hard, right? despite what everything says on Instagram and people sipping martinis on the beach and whatever, like that's not entrepreneurism. So you get into it, it's anything but that. But it makes sense that it's hard, right? It's like, okay, I get it, I accept it, and it doesn't necessarily make it easier, but we know we've got to overcome the significant challenge. And when you do, we have this really boring but important phrase for that, which is you have to find a profitable, sustainable market. That's really what early struggle is about. It's a fight to find people who will buy what you sell. And there's a whole thing around that, but suffice it to say, if you do that, what happens? You start selling things, and you go from maybe one service to 5 services, and or you go from one person, you in a basement, pounding it out, to having a few people working around you, and what happens is you move into this second stage, a very technical name for the second stage, and it is fun. And it's fun because it's not early struggle anymore. It's tough, it's hard work, but it works. And where back in early struggle, we were just trying to fight to survive. Now we're fighting and winning, and we're growing our organizations left and right. And again, it's not an easy part of the process, but it's really fun. It's exhilarating, and because it's fun to win. But what caught me out, which didn't make any sense, I had no language or concept of whenever it first happened to us. But what happens to every single successful organization is that fun creates this increasing degree of complexity inside the organization. So again, when it was just you in a basement, you didn't have any rent to pay for the business, and you didn't have any payroll to run, right? It was just you. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Now you've got 5, 10, 50 employees running around. It's not simple anymore, and it's definitely not easy. Where you used to have 1 or 2 services, now you've got a whole suite of services. Where you had 1 or 2 products, now you have 300 SKUs. Really, you look at it, and all of that success, it doesn't only leave clues, it also leaves a big mess in its path if you're not careful. And so what happens for these successful organizations is they hit this third stage called whitewater, where the complexity inside the business causes them to cause problems. We are the source of our own troubles in whitewater. We're stumbling over our feet. It's the teenage years of a business. We know what we want to do, but for some reason we just can't do it. We know what we used to do, and for some reason we can't do it. And I know for me, and this is the big driving factor, is there's all the mechanics of how do you lead a successful organization, et cetera, et cetera. But what we don't really spend enough time on is what it feels like to lead an organization that doesn't feel successful. And we were there. I had taken over as CEO. We had a couple more years of growth, and we hit this whitewater stage because we had 75 people running around, and we're trying to get them all pointed in the right direction, and we're trying to grow sales, and we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that, and launch this thing. And it just felt like we were always behind. It felt like nothing we do moved the needle the way that it used to. And, back when we started the business, and it felt like that kind of made sense because it was brand new, but it didn't make any sense why we were there again. And I remember the frustration and the confusion, and it's real stuff. Like, I had to fire some of my best friends during this time because they weren't doing what they needed to do as leaders. We had to stop big parts of our business. It's just real difficult decisions, just one after the next. And again, none of it made sense because it felt like we had done something wrong to get us into this place, right? It felt like I had failed as a leader, as an entrepreneur. And it wasn't until it was a podcast, I heard Les speak on these different stages. I heard him describe this whitewater stage and say it was a natural thing that every successful organization goes through. It was the first time that I actually felt like me and my business were on a map, right? Where I could actually understand why it was as difficult as it was, why we were in the place that we were in. And the sense of relief that brought, even before we fixed anything, but just that sense of relief to know that we hadn't gone off the face of the map, right? That we weren't in uncharted territory. Even though it was brand new for us, someone had been there before and they understood it so well. And in doing that, we were able to, just take the steps that he lays out in his book. We walked through those steps, and without exaggeration, we tripled our bottom line in a single year.
Very good.
And the change that does, the profit is great. It's wonderful. Who doesn't want to be profitable? But the change that brought for me as a leader, right? The confidence that I got back, the ease at which we were able to lead versus the struggle that it was to lead back in Whitewater. When you can do the right steps and find the right path out of that Whitewater period, you add the right things, that's what creates predictable success. And so for me, I get this is a really long answer to your question, but the driving factor was I knew what it was like to lead in Whitewater. I knew what it was like to be stuck in that really difficult stage. And I knew the way out, and I knew I had to find a way of helping others get out as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's good, man. That's real good. That's real good. This Whitewater, it just reminds me of rapids or Whitewater is where, when I think about Whitewater, I think about the when the waves begin to crash, and in certain areas, there's more waves than there is, flat sea. And so it's just really rough and it's really difficult. Everything is stirred up underneath you and above you. It just seems like you're just hoping for flat water and smooth sails, and it's just not there. So here's a question for you, and because it popped in my mind, and it's not to diverge from the direction you're moving, but passion. In the middle of Whitewater, is your passion at question? Your purpose, either or. I'll take either or, but is your passion or your purpose being questioned at that very moment? And how about this? Was your passion or your purpose being questioned? And what was your response?
Yeah, 100% yes. And just story after story I could tell you of clients, but one of my first clients after I started, I was speaking at a group of CEOs. He was there, and before the meeting, he was kind of talking about all the cool things that they were doing at their business and this new strategy they had figured out. And as I start talking, I go through and I explain each of the stages. It's a talk I do for CEO groups, and his face turns white. And when I get to Whitewater, and I'm thinking what's wrong? Like, this guy, there's something wrong with this guy. What's going on? And he just sits there stone faced for the rest of the talk. And we get to a break, and everyone leaves the room, and he doesn't move. And I'm kind of I don't know what to do. It's Ricky Bobby. What do I do with my hands? I was I didn't know what to do with myself. And he comes up to me after everyone left, and he's like, Scott, we're in Whitewater. And quite honestly, my wife and I were just talking about, if we can't solve this, we didn't know what to call it, but if we couldn't solve it, we were done. We were gonna wrap it up. We were gonna get out of the business, even if that meant we just had to give it all up, because we can't take it anymore. What had just happened, they had just lost one of their key leaders. They were struggling to bring in new clients the way that they needed to. The nature of their business, they brought in a whole bunch of clients all at the same time, which meant that they had to bring in a whole bunch of new employees. And it was really, really difficult. And it was all landing back on their shoulders. And so, yes, absolutely. Folks make a big difference of passion and purpose. But if you look at it, the definitions they use, you could take one person's, definition of passion and it was another person's definition of purpose. But your commitment to seeing your vision come to pass, right, by whatever language you use for that, definitely takes a significant hit. And it's kind of interesting because it comes in these different waves. At first, stuff goes wrong and you're just kind of things happen. Leading a business is hard. It's fine. We messed up that invoice, but Janice was out that week. And when Janice comes back, it'll all be fine. And so the first part of Whitewater is actually denial, where you're denying that anything's wrong. We've had problems in the past, and we just plow through them. We get stuff done. We're going to be okay. And then 6 months goes by, and we're still not okay. And then it's okay, maybe there's something wrong here, but we get stuff. We're going to figure this out. We're going to make it happen. And so you push harder, and then it doesn't work. And then you push harder, and you're doing everything that you know to do, everything that has worked in the past. And there, it's not all bad, but like it was in my situation, it just doesn't move the needle. And when that happens, you move from like that Icarus of like, we can do no wrong, we're going to get fly closer and closer to the sun, to you start to wonder if you can do anything right. And when you get to that place and you just keep taking those beatings, you're firefighting all the time. It's literally and physically exhausting.
Right.
It's emotionally taxing. And you can't help but question the purpose. In fact, there's a set of stages that founders go through individually, and they correspond loosely with the stages the organization is going through. But the defining question for a founder in that whitewater stage is this it? Like, did I do all that? Did I start the business? Did I make the leap? Did I spend all those years, all that blood, sweat, and tears to build this? Right? Like, this is the return on all of that hard effort. And it does. At the very center of the issue is, like, can we actually even hold on to this vision, or was it pie in the sky all along?
That's something else right there. And I can understand why the gentleman was like white in the face, because it is one of the greatest struggles, myself having been through whitewater stages and various businesses. And it's just like, it is, to say that it takes something from you is to say very little, because it does. And it takes something of you to be able to continue to press through that. Because I feel as if in that stage, it's very difficult. There's a biblical verse in the book of Acts, is like the 27th chapter. I think it's the 27th chapter. But Paul is like on this ship and he's going to Caesar and they're going to take him, obviously, if you know the scripture, this is where he's going to get beheaded eventually. But in this moment, he's like the only guy with hope. And everybody else, they're all scared. They're in the middle of this huge storm. And it's like being stuck in a tornado/hurricane on the water, and the boat's going and coming. And at this very moment, Paul's like, listen, nobody get off of the ship. Everyone stay on the ship. Eat something. Just trust me. And the scripture said, and they cast their sails and they hoped for day. And that's what that moment is. It's like, just hope. This blink, I don't know what's going to come, but I hope that I see some sunlight, because if not, I'm going to drown out here in the middle of my sorrows and nobody's going to know I was ever here.
Yeah, and what happens is, again, to kind of use these different stages, what happens is most founders, if they're there long enough, will think that they're in the very last stage. We call it death rattle, right? This is it, right? This is as far as we've been able to take the business. I gave it my best shot. We gave it our best shot. I guess this is as far as we'll ever go. I hope that we can be here tomorrow. It leads us to that place. But this is why I love working in this space so much, is because the next stage is not death rattle. In fact, if you can get just a couple of the right things and you do those right things in the right order, the next stage is predictable success. It's the peak growth stage of the entire history of the organization. It dwarfs what you were able to do back in that early fun stage when things felt so good. It's marked by, like we've mentioned the beginning of the show, by the ability to set and consistently achieve our goals together as an organization. And there's so much of a relief, especially from a leadership perspective, for getting out of that whitewater period and into predictable success. And again, that's why finding that we were on the map, that's what gave me the hope that, hey, we can actually get out of this. And I've seen that happen time and again for clients as well.
Wow, man. That's awesome. What was the, I feel like you've kind of explained this, and I guess I want to get back to it, and it's really just about like your mindset, and maybe this question is to reach back to the place where, maybe you were in your white waters and you started to press through, but what was the mindset that got you to I can do this no matter what. How did you get there?
Yeah, for me, there were a lot of failed attempts at that, and there were a lot of really bitter experiences. It's around that time, like a lot of folks, we started looking for other people to come in and help. We hired consultants, we hired coaches, and wonderful people who do wonderful work, but they didn't have what we needed, and neither of us knew it. Right? They didn't know it. We didn't know it. They thought they could help, but they just couldn't, not at the stage that we were in. And so what ended up happening, and this happens to so many people, is in our inability to find the right guides for the right time, we ended up feeling more alone than ever. It's one thing to be alone and think, oh, I can phone a friend, right? And it's like, I've never done it before, but I think it's possible. It's another thing to phone a friend and it fail, phone another friend and it fail. And now it's like, oh, the only way we're going to figure our way out of this is if we can figure it out. I never felt more alone than I did in that moment. And so that's actually, we were trying stuff, and I don't like to list names because there's a lot of great materials and great things out there. So we read a lot of the popular business books. We did what was in them, and they were helpful. They were nice, but they didn't actually change things for us. And that's where that feeling really stemmed from, is we just felt trapped. We felt stuck. And again, that moment for me, there were actually two moments. So the first one was just hearing about the stages and recognizing, oh, there's something here. We might actually be on a map, and we might have a map to get to where we want to go. The second one was where I actually got the book. And this will show your listeners and viewers how much of a nerd I am once again. But I was listening to this audiobook. So my wife is from Norway, which is just a wonderful blessing. And we get the opportunity to go back to Norway just about every year. And once we had kids, we would start using that as an opportunity to kind of leave the kids in Norway and head somewhere else in Europe. And I'm a big fan of Formula One racing, and which is getting popular here in the United States, but it was before the Netflix series, right? So it was back in 2013, 14, 15 in that range. And so we get this opportunity, like the planets aligned, and so did our schedules, but we got to go to the Monaco race, which is like the creme de la creme of Formula One racing. There's ridiculously fast cars going 115 miles an hour through streets as wide as your driveway, right? And there's yachts and there's buildings. It's right on the Riviera on the Mediterranean Sea. It's just this beautiful, beautiful place. So I'm on the flight there from Amsterdam down to Nice, France with my wife, romantic weekend, fast cars, everything you could ask for. And what is Mr. Romance doing? But listening to an audiobook about business life cycle stages. So I remember to this day, I'm looking out the window over the French countryside. I'm not making this up. This is a 100% true story. And we get to chapter 4 in the book where he's talking about whitewater, this whitewater stage that I'd heard of for 2 minutes on a podcast, right? And two thoughts, as he's explaining it, two thoughts hit me. One was, oh my goodness, we're in whitewater. How does he know all of this about our organization, right? It was like, does he have cameras here somewhere? Or like, has he been reading our emails? Because it was like scary, accurate depiction of where we were. But the second thought that hit me right away was, and I cannot explain this to the day, but it was, if I could help other people get out of this stage, I would die a happy man. Like if I could make a living doing this, I would die a happy man. And so for me, what it did for me, finding a resource that was the right thing for the right time, gave me the confidence not only to solve our problems, but to take what we learned from that process and from before that process, the painful parts, and help others to avoid and eliminate that same pain.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And making that decision, turning your business around.
Yeah. So this is funny. So like most people who read business books, I promptly said that was amazing. And then I stuck it on a shelf for about 3 years and didn't do anything. Right. I was like, oh, this great. Like now that I've read it, I automatically use it. So I went for another 3 years in whitewater, and it got worse and worse and worse. And then I like finally came to my senses. And right, I was like, hey, this guy Les, he talked about this in a book, and I even think he had some steps that we could follow in the back. So I went, dug up the physical copy I had of the book, went to the back of the book, and he literally has like, if you're in whitewater and you want to get to predictable success, here's step 1. I mean, it doesn't get simpler than this. And so like I took the book, I walked into a meeting, I said, guys, this is what we're going to do. And we did. We went through step by step. We did each of those steps. And by actually implementing it, that's where we saw that night and day difference. We tripled our bottom line in a single year, and then added another, I think it was another 10% the following year after that. So just tremendous turn in our profitability, while also adding a few $1 million to our top line in the process as well. So it was just a remarkable transformation that I to this day I can't take any credit for. All I did what Les told me to do, right? And that's not a rare thing, right? And having the opportunity now to teach all over the country, watch people implement on their own, similar to what we did, to walking people through the process myself, I've just seen it happen again and again and again. And it's not that there's some kind of magic secret or anything like that, but it's about just understanding what are the right things we need to do right now.
Yeah, I think that's really. I think there's a lot of credit owed to you. Number one, because yes, that's great that let's put it inside the book and it's for everybody. But just as you had forementioned, it was 3 years where it had just kind of like set and gathered dust. And that's what happens with most entrepreneurs. We go out, we read all of these books. We've got all these books here. We're reading and we're just studying, and it hits us like, that's my answer. And then you finish reading the book, and then that's it. It's like, I want to do something with that. I want to do something with that. I want to do something with that. I lost it. And now I'm reading a different book. And there's always an answer somewhere for somebody who's looking for it, right? If you're looking for the answer, it will show up. When the student is ready, the teacher will always appear. But when the teacher appears, will you do what they say?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I another part of it too, and I've just found this more and more, is it's harder and harder to recognize the teacher. There's so much resource that's available to us right now. And all of it is shouting, this is what you need to do, right? Top 10 things to succeed in 2020, fill in the blank, right? Every leader must do this. Every business has to, and what the truth of it is every single one of those resources is written, spoken, produced for people in a certain stage, right? However, they probably don't know that themselves. Their audience is self-filtered to that. So one of the first things to do to help kind of just dial down all the noise and give yourself a chance at hearing, finding the teacher that you're looking for, finding the mentor, finding the resource, is to look at those different, that wisdom, that advice, those books, those podcasts, and say, hey, who are these for? Are they for people that are in my stage? If not, you can learn from them. It's wonderful. It's great to, leaders are readers, but don't put the pressure on yourself to implement everything that everyone says. The reason why we didn't implement for 3 years was because I was so exhausted from trying to implement everything else I'd read the 3 years prior that I'd just kind of given up on the idea, even when I found the right thing. And so a big part of what you can do when you understand these stages is actually filter out a lot of the really, really good advice that is not relevant right now.
Mm. Yeah. And I would imagine that people will need help with that as well, which is good to have someone of your character, a coach that can help them through it. But you're kind of niched in to architecture. You like to stay there. Why is that?
Yeah, so a common misperception is one of the when you make up your own name, you end up having to explain it. But so what we do architecture on firms. We do organizational design. So what an architect does for a building or a landscape, we do for organizations. So what we do is help founders and senior leadership teams design and execute on scalable organizations.
Very good. Very good. Very close to organizational psychology. So I definitely understand this. Very good. Very good. I like that. I like that. What a great play on words too. And that's what it is. You're helping someone to design and to build a business as well as a life, because a business has a life. Every business has a life. And what we do with that life is truly up to the leaders within that business. So I love it. So tell me something. How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so scalearchitects.com is the best place. It was that page, the idea behind that page, even though it's a homepage for our site, was to answer that question. Where can folks go? So it's just full of resources. If you're listening to these stages and wondering, hey, I wonder what stage my business is in, there's actually a free quiz that'll show you how to do that. It's, the life cycle quiz right there on the page. There's some stuff around leadership styles, which is really helpful, and just a wealth of videos and articles, and even link to our podcast over there as well. So head over to scalearchitects.com. There's a link right at the top. If you want to get on a call with me, you can do that. If you want to get access to any of our free resources, they're all available right there.
Awesome. And the name of your podcast is the same as your business?
It is called The Secrets of the High Demand Coach. I selfishly went out and found some of the best coaches that I could and asked them for their advice. And then we recorded the conversations and we share it with everybody else. So you will hear just some brilliant, brilliant minds from both the business and nonprofit and leadership world who just so generous with their wisdom and just so articulate as well. I mean, these are folks who've been doing it and doing it and doing it, and just the clarity that they bring it's unreal. It's really cool.
Awesome. Hey, so tell me, Scott, is there anything that you would like to leave with the audience?
Yeah, I would say the thing for me that kind of sums all of it up is a phrase I use a lot, and it's that alone takes a long time, right? What we realized was that being alone takes a long time. And so the very first thing I had to get over, my own ego, get it out of the way, was that I had the answers or that I could find them. And while that may or may not be true, it's not relevant. What we're really looking at is what's the best way to find the support you need. And everyone needs somebody in their corner. And so I would encourage you don't have to do it alone. Oftentimes, especially entrepreneurs, we fall prey to the lie that to be an entrepreneur is to be alone or be lonely. And it's just not true. There's so many resources. There's so many people. There's so many confidants and advisors and peers that are available to you. And you don't have to do it alone.
Awesome, man. There you have it. This is Scott Ritzheirmer. And he really brought it. I enjoyed every bit of it. I thank you, Scott, for being on our show, my man. And feel free to hang out in the back. I'll be there in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and close this one out, all right?
All right.
There you have it, Scott. He is the official scaler of businesses. He is the architect of businesses. And you can see the way that he speaks, that he is a wealth of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And he's got a drive. He's got a passion to actually help people to build their businesses greater. And I think that that's really important, whether it's purpose or passion. At the end of the day, what we do, making what we do matter, is really what matters. So no matter where you are, as much as it starts with you, remember, it starts with me. Peace.